Great things about Game Market West for me this year was I brought my family and they ended up buying several games. What games did you buy?
I bought 2 tabletop role-playing games. I'm getting ready to travel and see my old high school role-playing buddies. So I bought a game called False Idols, and I bought The Conservatory.
You never play any of these games with me.
Neither of those games have the World of Warcraft hack and slash element that I think you find so endearing.
You got to try one of them with me sometime.
Let's play False Idols together.
Sure. I didn't even know you had bought any games. I feel like we didn't even see each other at Game Market West.
Well, after a little miscommunication about when you were getting there, and then you're like, go get me interviews. And so I went and got a lot of interviews.
You did great. My family ended up buying Mole Park Whack and Win, Spellcrafter, and a cute little otter game.
I played a lot of the Whack and Win with your son and the designer.
I'm Hunter Pence, and you're listening to the Misplay podcast. Oh, yeah.
Hello, and welcome to the Misplay, where we print your hidden cards on see-through paper. My name is Mark.
My name is Jason.
We're really not the design manufacturer people, are we?
No. So we have constellation cards in the game, and the idea is during the game, you're going to put one in front of you on the standee, and your opponent has one that you can't see on their standee. It's hidden. You don't know what they have unless I make the cards. I don't know why. I printed it on white paper and then I pasted them onto cardstock. Well, the cardstock I have just apparently, they're like Eastery colors. They're like the yellow, the teal, and the purple. Apparently, they're pretty see-through. So there I am doing the play test, and the 2 people are playing are going, yeah, but I can see what their pattern is through the card. It's like, yeah, that's a misplay.
One more point in favor of no standee, because if you put your card flat on the table, you can't see through the card.
Okay. That's a terrible reason.
It's an excellent reason.
Couldn't disagree with you more. Before we talk about that today, this week's episode is brought to you by Board Game Casual. Board Game Casual is a YouTube channel welcoming people into the board game hobby with video reviews, recommendations, unboxings, tips for accessorizing on a budget, and more. One of the things I really like about BGC, can I call them BGC?
I'm on team no acronyms.
One of the things I like about Board Game Casual, I like their honest reviews. For example, the recent title of a video is, Wine Cellar is okay, but there's a similar game I like better. Now, Mark, I'm slightly worried that that might be the title of our promo video when we send our game to them. Under One Sky is okay, but have you played Connect 4? We're going to risk it. We'll take the honest feedback. Give Board Game Casual a view at Board Game Casual on YouTube, at Board Game Casual channel. The Thing, Mark on manufacturing. You've had a lot of fun with the word manufacturing, I feel like. Manufacturing the fun, Mark on manufacturing. Is that your only way to make it fun? Just have wordplay?
Maybe.
Okay. You had said that I just sent you off at Game Market West. We should tell people first, Game Market West is an indie game market. It was hosted in San Jose. Board game designers in the Bay Area were able to come and set up a table and sell their games. And there were probably over 20 vendors there selling games. We were lucky enough to be allowed to go. Even though we weren't selling a game, we were there as special guests, the Misplay. We were there to promote our podcast, but also to demo our game.
I think it's not just wordplay, because we've approached finding a manufacturer in a way that resonates with the way I would think about learning or teaching how to find a manufacturer. We've played with components. We've done kind of our early exploration by ourselves. And now we're doing our fieldwork research.
Like little wizards or munchkins. We're doing our research. Ha, 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 ha.
Yeah, except instead of munchkins and wizards, we're talking to actual game designers with cool stories about how their games came into being and the places that they chose to work with.
Sure.
So in that regard, I did enjoy and had a good time going and talking to other designers to listen to them pitch their games and to hear about which manufacturing process or companies they were working with for the game that they were pitching.
So at the market, we set up a table. We had our Misplay banner out. We had our Misplay tablecloth. We had the game out. We had a computer set up for people to join our newsletter. We had some stickers out. I was manning the table and interacting with people walking by and asking questions. And Mark was walking around and he was talking to other designers. What we're going to do today is we're going to play those conversations and then just talk a little bit about them. And then when we get to the other thing, I'll tell you a little bit about how the playtesting went for the people who were gracious enough to sit down and play at the market.
In our first clip, I spoke with Andrew. And the cool thing about Andrew's process is he does everything local and does his assembly by himself. He essentially self-publishes out of his house with the support of a printing company.
What's your name and what are you selling at Game Market West?
Andrew DeLulo. I am selling 2 games here at Game Market West, Tundra Tussle and Light Up the Night. Tundra Tussle is a 2 to 4 player game about woodland animals celebrating the first snowfall of winter with a friendly snowball fight. It plays like a programming game. You lay out like your next 4 moves in a row, and everybody resolves their sequence to see how the plans are going to lay out. The other game, brand new, just made, is a game called Light Up the Night, which is a game in which you play as a small child running through a field of fireflies, chasing them into the night sky with the perhaps misguided belief that that is how the stars are made.
Tell me a little bit about who your manufacturer is, if you have one, and what is the manufacturing process that you use?
The manufacturer of this process is me. I make all of these games more or less in my house using various materials I either got on the internet or things that I was able to outsource from local stores. And I hit up some local printers to help me print out the cards, like double-sided. I also hired a local artist to help me make the cover art for the game, and then all the graphic design elements I made myself. It is very much a grassroots production.
I mean, that's a route we never explored. We never even thought about doing. I think there's a world where we could have 3D printed the game. I think we could have done that.
That wasn't the mission directive that when you came to me to start the show and the project, that wasn't the plan. It could easily become a plan for another project. Mostly, I just thought it was cool that there are people who do it that way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's great.
I'm going to go back to your Misplay. I don't think that's the route that we want to go. Can you imagine trying to do the assembly together?
Oh my goodness.
You'd kill me.
Probably. Let's find a manufacturer.
The second clip is with Ava from Wobby Blobby. And Ava went a more traditional route with a manufacturer.
Hi, thank you for taking the time to join us out of your bustling afternoon and morning. Tell us your name, your company, and your game.
Hi there. Thanks so much for covering this event. I'm so excited to share my game with you. My name's Ava. I'm the co-founder of Wobby Blobby. And it's a cozy creative game about spotting hidden pictures in watercolors. It's inspired by cloud spotting. So do you remember looking up at clouds as a kid and seeing sheep or weird creatures or maybe castles in the sky? So that's what this game is inspired by. You basically look at these watercolor clouds, if you will, and doodle what you see. That's step 1. Step 2, you spin a fun story around the table. Step 3, you end with some warm fuzzies and either share a compliment or kick off a conversation with people around the table. And it's really a game that inspires creativity and connection. And super quick and easy. It takes about 5 to 20 minutes to play. And people get a kick out of it. So we call it laughter therapy in a box.
Thanks so much for sharing. I did a lot of cloud gazing and star watching as a child. For our listeners at home, we're in our process of kind of learning about manufacturing and moving into that process of the physical production. So who was the manufacturer for your game?
My manufacturer currently is Hero Time. They're based in Asia.
Thanks so much for sharing. I hope you have a really successful day. Where can listeners find you?
Listeners can find us at Play Wobby Blobby on Instagram or wobbyblobby.com.
Thanks so much for taking the time, Ava.
How did you not buy a copy of this game? This seems right up your alley.
It sounds a lot like our game, except for a staff check-in.
But credit to you, by the way, because I don't think I can hear that and not go, I have a game that's just like it. But instead of looking up into the clouds, you're looking up into the stars.
Well, the good thing is from the demo that I saw, the games don't play remotely the same. Take a note down, though. Hero Time is our manufacturer to consider.
I remember asking Ava a question because I met them at the GDC. They use a dry erase marker on their game when people draw on these sleeves. And I was asking them, does it get messy? And the sleeves that she was showing me were very good. So instead of writing like a laminated card on top of it, it sits in a sleeve. So you could have sleeves that rather than writing on the card, you can write on a sleeve. I thought that was interesting.
They're top loaders from like collectible card games.
Yeah, like that.
Really clever components. It was another one of those games that looked and just stood out in the visual presentation of the game to me. There was a lot of that at Game Market West. For the third clip, I spoke with Peter and Andrew about their card game.
Hello. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Tell me a little bit about yourselves, your company, and pitch me your game.
Hi, I'm Peter with Dodeca Donuts, and with me is Andrew from Dodeca Donut. We have the game Fantasy Food Fight. It's a take-that-style party game to play with your friends. So it's in the same space as like Exploding Kittens or Uno, and your goal is to be the last baker standing in a baking battle royale.
Tell us who your manufacturer is and a little bit about how you came to that decision.
So we're using What's Games to do the manufacturing. We spoke with What's, we talked to Longpack and a few other places to get bids. At the end of the day, we chose What's because I have a slight relationship with with the sales rep that we work with. Their pricing per deck for the game, it's a pretty simple card deck. It's about 65 cards, something like that. 67 cards in a box. I want to say their price per unit, once we got over like 1,500, was about $1.25 to $1. We ended up ordering about 3,000 units for the printed, and we expect, it ended up being about $1 and a few pennies for that. Then with shipping and all the rest of it, we expect our landed cost to be about $2.15 per unit.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
You got somebody else to say landed cost. It wasn't just us. I'm really appreciative that they were willing to share their landed cost. They're just a card game, right?
Only cards.
I've also heard of What's games, and I don't remember what game I was looking up, but there was a game I was like, oh, who's the manufacturer? And that company came up. So not the first time I'm hearing them.
They're one of the manufacturers I approached at Gen Con, and I believe they were one of the only ones who really sat down with me to talk to me about our game a little bit.
Ship it, box it.
The game they were selling, the Take That Food Baker game, was not like the most prominent feature when I walked by. They had all this cool like Dungeons and Dragons paraphernalia. They had like coffee container dice towers and other like cool dice holders that were in the theme of their company. But the game sounded cool. Who doesn't like throwing spite at your friends as your game opener before your game night?
Love throwing it at you. Take that.
It's always nice to run into a familiar face. The last couple of like big events that I've gone to, especially like Gen Con when I was on my own, it was nice to run into and get to talk to Leonie, who's been on the show before. She was selling a new game, and so for clip 4, I got to hear about one of Leonie's new projects.
Hello, welcome back. For our listeners at home, please introduce yourself and tell us about the game you're selling at Game Market West.
Hi, I'm Leonie. I have 2 titles that I'm selling at Game Market West. Biome, which is a nature-themed tableau builder for 1 to 4 players. Basically, players play through the seasons, are trying to build a biodiverse ecosystem. Every season, something special happens in your biome. Players play until someone reaches 120 points or fills up their biome. That triggers the final season, and whoever has the most points wins the game. And then I've also got Fakin. It is a social deduction game for 2 to 9 players, where players take on the role as children from the Fey courts of summer and winter and are trying to identify the heir of each court. And you do so by dueling. And my favorite part about the game is that it's possible that all players are on the same team and it becomes a co-op game and you don't even know it, in which case you all win or lose together.
Tell us, which manufacturers did you use for Biome and Fakin?
Yeah, so I used Longpack for Biome, and Delano, based in Michigan in the U.S., for Fakin.
Thanks so much, Leonie. It was great to have you back on the show. Good luck and enjoy your time here at Game Market West.
I've heard that from several people, that if you just have a card game, just cards, which is Fakin is just cards, then you can do that in the US and get good quality, and you're paying more than you would in China, but you're paying less for the shipping to you. So it kind of balances itself out.
So what I'm hearing is we should pivot back to dating game.
That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, if we just had a card game, I think we could explore US manufacturers. Given what we are building, I do think we have to look at China. And Long Pack is one of those big ones. Long Pack and Panda are the ones that I think get mentioned the most often. And so Long Pack did Biome for Leonie.
I seem to remember it was a pretty even split when I was talking to other designers or other people at Gen Con between Long Pack and Panda. They're definitely the giants in the room.
My limited understanding is Panda's quality is a little bit better, but they cost more. And Long Pack is just a little bit under, and they cost less. I could be wrong, but that's what I've heard. We'll find out when we send out our spec sheets and obtain quotes.
Clip 5 is with Brian, who is the game designer for Mole Park.
And before this clip, I will say, you went over there to talk to, I remember being like, hey, you should, my son really likes that game. You should go check it out. And you walked over there. 30 minutes later, you're still over there playing the game. And I'm just like, this guy, he's just hanging out playing board games all day. I'm over here working.
I was trying to strike the balance of I wanted to be an asset to the people that I was going to ask some time from. We had a couple of different players come back to play Mole Park.
It's fair.
Hello, thank you for joining us for the Misplay podcast live at Game Market West this year. Introduce yourself and tell me about your game.
Hi, I'm Brian Richkin, founder of Restart Round Games, and our game is Mole Park, a chaotic whack-a-mole adventure dice rolling fiesta for up to 8 players.
I had a blast playing it. I know Jason's son really enjoyed playing. Who was your manufacturer for the game?
So we used Magicraft in China because they had a low minimum order of 250. We ended up getting 500, but that was one of our options that we found. And at the time, they were the cheapest.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. I hope you have a successful day here at Game Market West.
That could be a viable strategy for us. If we don't get 1,000 orders, we might want to consider having somebody who is willing to do, that's the lowest I've ever heard, right? 250 as a minimum print run.
Again, thinking back to my time at Gen Con, I do remember manufacturers saying that they would do 250, but nobody was talking to me in terms of actual pricing or how it would increase or decrease based on how many units we were going to order. It's cool to hear that Magicraft at one time was the most affordable rate for a minimum order quantity that we might consider. For clip 6, I got to sit down with Gregory from Food Truck Race, who is one you sent me to because of the components of the game.
And I'll also say before the market started, Gregory was somebody who was walking around. He came over, he looked at, what we were doing. He said, hey, who is the Misplay? They were asking questions. I was just really appreciative that there were designers walking around saying, who are you? What do you do?
Hi. Thank you for taking the time to join us here at Game Market West. Tell us your name and about your game.
My name is Gregory. Let me tell you about Food Truck Race. In Food Truck Race, you're a food truck chef, plating orders for hangry customers in your line. Every single food truck is going to start with that base model, 3 prep station, 1 mise en place with no upgrades in that truck. It's a broken engine. But you're going to use the 2 dice roll to prep the groceries that you purchase for your truck to fill your mise en place with usable ingredients for orders in your line. You're going to plate those menu items by taking those ingredient cubes mapped to your menu for the dollar on that value, moving you forward on that food truck race. Every time you plate, you move forward. Every time you purchase an upgrade for your truck, you move backward on the food truck race, creating a slingshot effect, which makes it hard to figure out who's actually in first place. In this game that's simultaneous play, you're going to always roll to prep, always plate orders in line, and then when it's your turn, you get to shop, upgrading your truck and reorganize to set up for the next round of turns. This game includes the pop-up play-to-learn minigame, which is a stripped-down version of the game that allows you to learn Food Truck Race in about 10 minutes, not by reading the rules, but by playing the rules. Comes on the back of every food truck mat. This game is a race to $50 around the Food Truck Race. The person that hits first triggers the last round of turns where everyone gets one more roll. You can plate 25 $2 orders, or you can plate 4 $15 orders. How you play this game will decide who wins the Food Truck Race, not by brute force and long-term strategy, but by tactical decision-making every moment of play. That's the quick and dirty. Enjoy. And the printer of my game is Do Fine out of Shanghai. They did a great job, and you want to talk about how to design that piece of it, I'd love to chat with you.
Yeah, I did go over and look at Gregory's pieces. It's weird. I think it's weird now that I go over to a board game and I just want to pick up and touch the pieces. He had punch board. So he had like this dual layered punch board with some imaging where the punch outs are. And then they had both wooden pieces and they had cardboard rectangles that slotted in. I'm like, we need to be thicker, though. We need to be thicker. I'd like to do wood still, but I could see a world where cardboard would be fine if it was just thicker. It rose up higher.
The cardboard slot-ins aren't going to be a viable option because they were there to slide a little bit more and sat flush. Since ours are raised and we're going to be pulling tiles against the frame more, I think you have to go with wood still.
I'd like to. Landed cost. But I'd like to.
Matcha was only $25. For the 7th clip, I spoke with Tiffany with Battle Gnomes.
Hi, thank you for taking the time to join us today, this afternoon, while you're so busy with Game Market West. What's your name? What's your game?
My name is Tiffany Branham, and I designed Battle Gnomes. It is a game about recruiting gnomes, arming them with weapons, and then attacking the other players for gnome glory.
And who's the manufacturer that you used?
I used Sunday Games in China. They're a little bit smaller, which was nice for us because it felt like we had a lot more direct contact with them, and they were very responsive.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. Good luck today, and I hope you enjoy your time at Game Market West.
I mean, that's a good reason to select a business partner. They're responsive.
Customer service goes a long way.
Oh my goodness, we could do a whole episode on customer service.
Could we?
I could.
I'm trying to think if I've worked a customer service job.
Oh, okay. See, I've worked customer service and I have a lot of opinions on it.
For the last clip, I spoke with Dylan.
Hello. Thank you for taking the time to join us today at Game Market West. Tell us your name and about your game.
Hi, my name is Dylan. I am from Charming Games. We are based in Shanghai, China. We are currently selling Otter and Capybara Crush here at Game Market West. Otter is a climbing shedding game where you have 3 different piles, each one a very cute otter. You're trying to put cards on their tummy. Each otter is very picky, so they have a rule about numbers and a rule about the colors. If you match both rules, you can play again on that same otter, so you can have really big combo turns. And then our other game that we're selling this weekend is Capybara Crush. It's a spatial puzzle game, so if you know Azul or Sagrada or Cascadia, it's kind of like that, but in card game form. You're trying to make long chains of the same animal, but you're also paying attention to the backgrounds. So every turn is a little puzzle. You're just drawing a card, playing a card into your tableau. That's what we do. We're like very cute and clever games.
And who do you use for your manufacturer for your games right now?
So living in Shanghai, I have a lot of options of all the factories around us. I can visit the factories, talk with everybody. I'm using Hopes, which is located right outside of Shanghai, so I can go visit them, hang out with them, play test things with them. And they've been amazing. I've been working with them since 2019, and I couldn't be happier.
Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us. I hope you've had a successful day at Game Market West.
Dylan is somebody that I would love to talk to more. Dylan lives part-time in China and has these relationships with manufacturers. This is the friend I need.
Well, part of my follow-up off mic was I did pitch the possibility of having Dylan come on the show, and I said you'd reach out. So get on it, business guy.
I'm on it. So that was Mark on manufacturing.
You just wanted the alliteration.
A little bit.
There was a person I talked to that I didn't do an interview with because they didn't sell themselves as a designer. Mo was their kind of like as a salesperson, but also kind of low key said that he does publishing and partners with other indie designers or other publishing projects. I think Mo would be a great person to invite to be on the show at some point, because when we talked about, we never thought about making the game in-house, either 3D printing or some other like assembly in your garage, arts and crafts style. We've never really talked about pitching a publisher.
Right. Wasn't part of the plan. We still haven't talked about why, really. We're just like, that wasn't the plan. Why didn't we explore that? I think as an episode.
Mo would be a great person to invite from ashyfeet.com.
Let me ask you, going around and talking to the designers, what surprised you? Because I have one. There's one that stands out to me. I'm curious if you were thinking the same lines. What stood out to you? What didn't you know that you know now?
I don't know if it was the size of Game Market West as this like indie hub, but I was surprised that Longpack and Panda weren't mentioned more frequently. I think the takeaway for me from that kind of sharing from everyone else was, and we know we're going to be in this camp of being very small relative to what very large companies do in terms of their manufacturing projects. By this sample, it looks like it makes sense. Or there's something about going with one of the smaller manufacturers, whether it's they'll accommodate a smaller minimum order or they're better at holding our hand while we figure out what we need to do. But there was a lot of pointing towards the non-giants.
That was one of the things that stood out to me too, is that I kept hearing names I hadn't heard. I'm like, oh, I don't know who that is. Oh, don't know that one. There's probably a large number of manufacturers. And I like your reasoning that there is some reason to go with different companies, and that could be because of minimum order quantity. It could be I already know somebody, or I have a good relationship with them, or they're responsive. The other thing that stood out to me was the number of, even here in the Bay Area, this is a small indie company. They're using China manufacturing. I thought there were going to be more people that were just doing it themselves at an indie market like this. I think it's cool to hear that there's lots of people who have gone down the path that we're going, that are making, essentially ours is an indie game as well. I really did think most people, when we got there, I'm like, oh, you know what I did? I think I said it to you at one point. I said, I'm worried that half the people are going to tell us they're just making them themselves, and we're not going to get like manufacturer recommendations.
We got the best of both worlds. We got a cool story in self-publishing at home. And then we got, I think, the groundwork for future discussions about manufacturers that we should be considering. The other thing.
Nice. While Mark was walking around doing, I don't know why you didn't, by the way, say, I'm Mark from the Misplay, because you get the alliteration again. And this is Mark on manufacturing. Tell us who you are.
I hadn't written the show doc yet.
While you were walking around and talking to designers, I was talking to the people who were walking by. So there were, I don't know if they measured how many people came to Game Market West, but there were always new people walking by the booths, the tables, and it was a range of people. There were young people, there were older people, there were game designers. I talked to one family. The husband was just starting to design a game and learn about game design. I'm like, yeah, you should check us out. We're a podcast. So people were going by, and I was telling, because we were primarily there to promote the podcast. The idea, we didn't have anything to sell. We were selling ourselves. We were selling the show. We wanted people to know that, hey, there's this podcast and we talk about board game design. And if you're here buying a board game, you might be interested in what we're talking about. I was there in front of our table, in front of our banner with stickers, and just talking to people who were going by. But we were also lucky enough to have a small space on our table for people to sit down and play test the game. So I had one of the signs from the Golden Gate Game Makers that said players wanted. I stuck an additional sign on it and said, it's a 2-player game. It's a 5-minute teach, 10-minute play. And throughout the market, there were people sitting and playing. I feel like 80% of the time there were 2 people sitting in a chair playing the game. Again, we're trying to get our podcast out there, but we're also saying, hey, we're building this game.
I remember the beginning you telling me, oh, like if you see me busy, like hop on over from your interviews and running around. I didn't really get a chance to hop on over. I did make it back to teach the game once. I'm thinking about the revisions to the rulebook that have to happen. Without throwing anybody under the bus, what were some of the common player errors that you were seeing that we might want to be considering in the way that we write the next version of the rulebook?
I mean, the only person to be thrown under the bus is me because I'm doing the teach. Actually, what I'll say is I think this is great. I think this is really good. I don't see a lot of player errors. The misplay on the previous show was me making an error playing the game. I think that's really good. I think that's really good that we don't see a lot of player error. I'm always impressed when two people can play the game after a teach and make no mistake in moving the pieces. I think that's a sign of it's just very straightforward. It's relatively simple to understand. I routinely hear that the pieces having the direction that they move is really important. I think the thing that would be the hardest is still lining up, because we haven't made any changes, lining up the star chart with the constellation in your hand. I'm doing that in the teach. I'm telling them, you're going to play with your red line down. You're going to play with your red line up. So I'm not giving them an opportunity to figure that out in a teach like that because I value their time. Then what I would say, just from watching somebody play the game for the first time, they don't play defensively. That's not an error. That is just a repetition, volume thing that as you play the game more, you will start to develop strategy. A couple of times, there was somebody at Game Market West who came back to play with somebody else. And it was really interesting because I had stepped away from the table for a second to get water. And when I came back, they were explaining the rules to somebody. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. I'm not seeing a lot of player errors.
What was your temperature check on how players enjoyed or what they thought of the game?
I still always worry that people are just like going to tell you, cool game. I like it. Positive. People said they would play it again. People said they would, check out the podcast and follow our story. There's always a couple of people. There were a couple of playtesters who were expressing that their brain is being broken a little bit. So I do think that's not for everybody, that there is a thinky element to the game as it progresses. In the beginning, you just make one move. In the beginning, there's limited options. And then as the game progresses, there's lots of options. One of the quotes I wrote down from Game Market West is just, game's complicated. Game's complicated.
Complicated but fun. Complicated in the right way.
I mean, I think so. I think if you can teach the game in just a couple of minutes and people can play it without making errors, yet there are moments in the game where you're just like, what do I do? Trying to find the optimal play is very tricky, at least for me and other people I see.
I can probably count on one hand the number of times that I actually spend the time thinking of like, what is the best move?
Yeah, you play differently though. One of the things that I still struggle with, Mark, is a couple of times I've rotated the board into my win, not knowing I was going to rotate the board into my win. I thought maybe I was still 2 rotations away. And I wrote, and they're like, oh, it's so, I think it's very difficult for players to see their pattern, 90 degrees, even just 90 degrees. I think that's tough for people to see that they're going to rotate into it. Other people fully understand it and see it. That's probably the most challenging thing for people, is seeing their pattern in a different orientation than where they're going to want to get it.
I'm surprised you didn't try we haven't talked about this yet. I'm surprised you didn't try the stack display for the shared pool. We were still in the shared pool of 3 tiles now and replenishing from the bag and the option to draw a random one like Cascadia.
Well, you and I took last week. We didn't record last week. You came over and we just play tested. We play tested the stack. I felt like you were off of it. I thought you were of the mind that it makes the decision paralysis that can happen later in the game really difficult, because now that you can see all of the colors and the star tiles that'll be available during the game, that it's a whole nother layer of strategy that you have to think about. And I thought we liked that there's just 3 out there. They have to pick one of those 3 and they don't know what's coming next. And that made it easier. So I thought we were off of it, to be honest.
I think all of that is true, but the more pressing thing to me was how insistent you were on this like magical stacking box that we were going to have them in. And I'm still thinking like that seems to overcomplicate what's going to go in the box. I may be revising my stance on it because watching people have to go to the bag every time.
Yeah, I hear you.
And I think there are solutions where you don't have to have all the colors apparent. You could have a solid single color with a little bit of like logo and design and just flip the tiles up. And when you flip them up, then you see the color of the tile and you could obscure the rest.
So right now in the game, the tiles are 3 different colors. And then we have a sticker on top of each one of those. So on the bottom and the sides, you can see the color of the tile. So you can see that it's a blue tile, but then it also has the orthogonal image that is blue on top of it. What you are saying is we're still going to have those 3 different stickers on top, but the tiles would be all printed in one color.
Quirkle style.
Sure. Yeah, that would eliminate that extra layer of strategy, which some people might find is really great. I think a lot of people would be put off by it. So yeah, that takes us back to I have to have a cool thing that it sits in. It would be the insert inside the box that the 27 tiles would sit in that you then pull out and set up and just put straight down or sideways or...
I think that's something we should revisit because I think the bag thing is kind of heinous for how fast the turns are.
That's good that people are taking quicker turns though. But yeah, I mean, you pick up a tile from the shared pool and you put it to the board and then you have to reach into the bag and replace it. The other person's already reaching to take their turn and then they've got to grab the bag and pull the tile out and put it back. I'm glad you saw that though, because I thought you were totally just against the stack.
No, I'm not totally against the stack.
Well, that's going to be a future episode then for sure.
The Misplay podcast is brought to you by Howley Boy Games. Consider donating at buymeacoffee.com/themisplay. We express our humble gratitude and recognize any level of support here on our list of sponsors. If you'd like to become a featured sponsor of the show, find our form at themisplay.com/sponsors. That's a segment archived in our podcast past.
Go on.
Really looks like I'm going to say something really important, doesn't it? You know what segment is not an archived part of our podcast past?
No.
Our sponsors.
What a lead in.
What are we talking about today?